smash, 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 and smash some more. Smash your way through dungeons, smash your way through bosses. Hey guys, what's going on? Xygor here, and I've been playing a lot of the Barbarian builds in Season 2 of Diablo 4, but one of the most powerful for sure is the HOTA Barb, or the Hammer of the Ancients Barb. This is a build that can just waltz into dungeons, clear them out quickly, and often one-shot bosses. I've done that several times, as you can see from the footage here. So I actually build this build in a way that it can do significant amounts of AoE damage too, and this is going to be the build guide where I show you how to do it. So I'm going to get into the skills, the gear, the gems, the expertise, the Paragon boards, and the Vampiric Powers, because it's Season 2 and that's the mechanic. So if you want to crush your way through dungeons, hammer time style, this is the guide to follow. Let's get right into the skills real quick. First of all, we have all three shouts: Rallying Cry, War Cry, Challenging Shout, and Wrath of the Berserker for damage. And then we have a basic skill of Lunging Strike, and then Hammer of the Ancients, which this build revolves around. Let's talk about the gear and the aspects. So a lot of the gear and the aspects in this build is similar to what I ran in the Double Swing build, with a few exceptions. For Helm, we have Tusk Helm of Jorts the Mighty. This has some pretty good modifiers, including more ranks of aggressive resistance, gives you more survivability and damage while berserking. But also its special ability is just incredible. Basically, when you gain berserking while already berserk, so it's kind of like a double berserk, you get more damage, you get more fury, and you get more cooldown. And this happens a lot. We're stacking a lot of things that allow us to get berserking. If you don't have this helm, not to fear, you can use a straight up mitigation helm with damage while berserking, total armor, life, and one other stat. But yeah, this is a really good helm to have. For chest, we're just going with a straight up mitigation chest. I like to have armor, max life, damage reduction from close, and damage reduction while fortified. You can get other damage reduction modifiers than the last two, but you definitely want total armor and max life. On this, I have Disobedience. Disobedience is a great armor stacking buff, and you can get it up to 66%. I only have 54, but it just really ramps up your armor to incredible levels. For gloves, we have a gloves where we want attack speed, critical strike, lucky hit chance, and Hammer of the Ancients at 4 ranks when it's max upgraded. This is a fantastic damage piece, probably one of the most important in the entire build, and it really synergizes well with this aspect, Relentless Berserkers, and this gives your core skills a chance to extend the Berserker time by 2 seconds, and if it's a crit, it doubles that. We're going to be berserking a lot, we're going to be critting a lot, and we stack lucky hit to an extent here where this is up a lot. So this is very helpful. It really is one of the engines of this build that helps you crank out those huge overpower hits of 50+ million. For pants, we have Tybalt's Will, also another great synergistic piece, if that's a word, by the way. This pants allows you to deal more damage whenever you're unstoppable, and we'll talk about this in a second, but we're using a Vampiric Power where just evading makes us unstoppable, but beyond that we get unstoppable in several other ways. But not only do we get that damage boost, we also get the 50 of our primary resource. So if you have a boots with 2 evade charges, you can do this all the time. It's absolutely fantastic, pretty busted, and very good in this build. I'm not that enthusiastic about the potion capacity roll especially, but the other rolls on this item are pretty good. Potion capacity just isn't that helpful in comparison in my mind, but still way worth using. If you don't have Tybalt's Will, use a straight up mitigation pants, take another aspect. For boots, we want Ghostwalker aspect on a boots with movement speed, berserking duration, damage reduction while injured, and fury cost reduction. Those are the 4 best modifiers if you want to go a glass cannon HOTA Barb, which I mostly am. If I wanted to just run hundreds all day, I would stack a little bit more resistance in this build, but I choose to go more glass cannon so I can just speed run 70s, 80s. But you will want to have more resistance if you don't want to go glass cannon. For neck, we have Banished Lord's Talisman, an incredibly powerful new item that got introduced that gives you overpower, crit strike, resource generation, and all skills. Huge damage boosting neck. Its special unique ability is incredible. Every time we use 300 of our primary resource, our next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. We're stacking crazy amounts of overpower in this build, and those overpowers do 112% increased damage. It can go up to 120. This is incredible. It allows you to get those 50+ million overpower hits when you're rolling through the dungeons. It allows you to one-shot bosses, which you saw in the footage. For your rings, you want one ring with Ring of Echoing Fury and one ring as a Bold Chieftain's aspect. Both of these things allow you to keep your Fury generation high and keep your shouts cooled down and kind of recycling quicker. The four rolls that I like to have on both rings is Crit Strike Chance, Damage to Close Enemies, Lucky Hit Chance, and Resource Generation. If you can't get damage to close enemies, you could also go with Damage while Berserking is another very good modifier that we're getting a lot of out of this build too. But these are my favorite four because the close modifier rolls higher. Alright, for weapons, we want the same priority rolls in each and every weapon if we can get them. There's one exception, I'll touch on that in a second. But right here, our top rolls that we want is Strength, All Stats, Overpower Damage, and Damage while Berserking. If you can't get All Stats or Strength, get Damage while Close or Core Skill Damage instead. None of my weapons are optimal, but I basically try to get as many as I can with Overpower, Damage while Berserking, and Strength and All Stats. For one-handers, you want maces in both. That's because they have an implicit overpower damage roll of 78.8%. That's huge. That really helps you crank out the damage and do those huge hits. But none of my weapons is totally optimal. You see, I kind of have some junk rolls. Certainly damage over time is one of those. Damage to injured enemies, it's okay, but it's not great because we're doing much of our damage up front and doing a lot of one-shots. So I would optimize here if I could. For sword or slashing weapon, I should say, you can't really get what you want because you're either going to have an axe or a sword. The sword gives you a guaranteed critical strike damage roll implicitly, and an axe gives you damage to healthy enemies roll. Axes are technically better now because they really nerf critical strike damage. For the two-handed mace, I have Limitless Rage aspect, just more damage there. For the two-handed slashing weapon, I have Edge Masters, much more damage there. For the one-handers, we have Accelerating aspect on one, gives you higher attack speed, you're critting all the time, you'll get the benefit of that. And Hammer of the Ancients, Ancestral Force aspect here, just does more damage and allows the hammer to quake outward, just gives you a little bit more extra damage. So that's basically the gears. For gems, we want to put red gems in all of our armor, gives us more max life percentage, and the way that the game handles fortified now is it's based off of your maximum life. So this is going to give you more fortification anyway. In my mind, there's not a big reason to put blue gems in your armor anymore, so it's guaranteed red. For weapons, we touched on this earlier, but because overpower is so strong, we're stacking overpower damage gems in all of our weapons as well. Max those out. For jewelry, we're using diamonds in each. That gives us resistance to all elements. Remember, I built this a little bit glass cannon, but this does help us a little bit. These three pieces in total gives us plus 15% on top of what we have already. Like I said, if I wanted to run hundreds all day, I would put some, poison, fire, cold resist on my gear, but I don't really prefer to do that. But this build absolutely could, easily crush through that if you did it that way. For expertise, we're using the two-handed axe expertise, just a big damage boost. We're making enemies vulnerable, and this allows us to do more damage to vulnerable enemies. So that's basically it for the gear, the gems, and the expertise. Let's go to the skill tree. Skill tree, we'll expand this out here. Scroll to the top. So for the skill tree, our basic skill, we have Lunging Strike 1 point. Through Combat Lunging Strike, this is kind of a multi-purpose Swiss Army knife that allows you to do some traveling and really get berserking off sometimes when you need it. You don't need to use it that much in this build, but it is helpful. For our core skills, we have Hammer of the Ancients up to 11 because of the gear we have, up to Furious Hammer of the Ancients. So it does more damage for each point of fury that you have, scales incredibly well. This is super powerful and really good. We have defensive skills. So for defensive skills, we're stacking 5 points in Rallying Cry and then going to Tactical Rallying Cry. This allows you to regen more fury quickly, and it's just super helpful. For Challenging Shout, this is your bread and butter defensive ability. Right now I have it to gain 48%, and we have it going down to Tactical Challenging Shout. For Warcry, we have only 1 point in that, and that goes to Power Warcry. And then we have 3 points in Booming Voice. Allows your shout skill durations to be much longer. Super important one to take. 3 in Raid Leader. And 3 in Guttural Yell. This one gives you a little bit more healing. This one gives you more damage mitigation. You'll be shouting a lot. You get that a lot. We have 7 points in Aggressive Resistance, but it's really 3. We're just getting bonuses here. So you get more damage reduction while berserking. We're berserking a heck of a lot of time in this build, so it's really helpful. And then 3 points in Prolific Fury just allows you to generate more fury overall. Going down to Weapon Skill Mastery, we have 3 points in Pit Fighter. Just gives us more damage to close enemies and a little bit of distant damage mitigation. We have 1 point in Thick Skin, mostly just to get us to counter-offensive to 3 here. Just does more damage if we have Fortify over 50%, which is a lot of the time. Alright, going down to Ultimate Skills, we have Wrath of the Berserker, down to Supreme Wrath of the Berserker, just a very good damage boost that also generates more fury when it's active, and it's one of the mechanisms that we can use to trigger the Helm unique ability that I talked about earlier. We also have Wallop here, just more damage, and 3 points in Brute Force. Just does more damage when using a two-handed weapon. With your overpowers, you're going to overpower a lot. There's a few different overpower engines we're using per se, and I'll talk about that when we get into the Paragon Board and the Vampiric Powers. But you're going to be hitting overpowers a lot, and this is hugely helpful. Then we have Unbridled Rage. This is the one that gives you more damage at the cost of more fury, but it really is the only option in this build. Let's go to the Paragon tree and the Paragon board in general. I've optimized this the best way possible to gain as much of the best stuff in the game since they really transformed a lot of the game's mechanics. Namely, they've nerfed crit strike damage and vulnerable and really boosted the power of berserking and overpower. Those two things in particular. So these two boards really emphasize those two things, and close damage especially, but we're getting all sorts of stuff. So I'm pretty proud of these boards. I tried to optimize it as best as possible, and here's what we came up with. So on the first board, original board, you can get 70 strength, and that we have Ire, gives us more damage while berserking, and you take reduced damage from elites. Very good to take. We're getting Iron Strength here, we're getting, you know, Raw Power here, we're getting Brawn here, we're getting Tenacity here. Lots of survivability stuff. We can cover a lot of bases in this first board. Second board, we're coming up to Martial. Martial, we're just getting the minimum here, 40 Strength, to get some boosts to our Shout cooldowns. You're not benefiting a ton from the stats of this, but it's still worthwhile to take for the Shout improvements here. We're also getting Iron Strength node there, and Raw Power node here, so getting more rare nodes as well. Come on over to the east, we get Enraged here, more damage while berserking, and berserking duration. And we're getting Wrath as our glyph here. This gives us critical strike damage, and skills that critically strike gain 3 fury. We're going to be doing a ton of critical strikes, getting a lot of fury. Crit strike damage, not as good as it used to be, but still pretty good in this build. Fierce here, Brash here, and then we're taking the path southward down here to the next board, and this is the Bonebreaker board. And Bonebreaker board, we have Territorial here. This is for close damage and also damage reduction to close enemies here. By the way, everything in this guide is in a link in the description below to see the planner. You can see the exact Paragon boards and aspects and what I'm taking. We can also take Rare Node's Vigor, Brutality, Inner Strength, Bulwark, and Bonebreaker. Bonebreaker is one of the overpower engines we have, so every 12 seconds your next skill is guaranteed to be overpower. We have about 4 other overpower sources in this build. This is one of them. It's fantastic. We take the path eastward here to Dominate. So Dominate is going to give us plus 308.9% additional overpower damage. That's incredible. It's going to make us super powerful, and it also gives us the bonus ability of, after not overpowering for 30 seconds, your next attack will overpower. Another overpower engine here. This requires willpower, so we're getting 39. We can also take raw power here, and we can take conditioned here, and core reserve. This is the Warbringer board. From there, we take the path northward to our last board, and this is the Blood Rage board. And here we're not getting a glyph, but we are getting Enraged, just more damage while berserking and berserking duration, and probably the most important legendary node in the entire board, it certainly is Blood Rage. So basically your damage is increased by 20% of your damage while berserking bonus, so it's just a huge boost to your overall damage. We are not making enemies bleed in this build. We're just taking this for the secondary bonus, but nonetheless, it's super powerful. And that'll do it for the Paragon board. Let's talk Vampiric Powers, because Vampiric Powers is the new seasonal mechanic. Like I said in the intro, I built this in a way where I can do significant AoE damage, and Hammer of the Ancients is not a build that typically does very good AoE damage. But I'll show you how I built it here. There's 2 really AoE sources, but I'm kind of taking a lot of the powerful stuff. So let's start at the top. Resilience, just an incredible damage mitigation / reduction power. For this one, we get plus 1% damage reduction for each 2% life we're missing. So if we go down to, say, you know, minus 80, we get plus 40 damage reduction on top of everything we have. So that's just incredible. It's a very good one. Hemomancy. Okay, so here is just, I think, the vampiric power that is being slept on, frankly, by a lot of people. This is a great source of AoE damage that allows you to clear through nightmare dungeons super quick. Basically, your attacks are dealing 80% of your maximum life as physical damage every 4 seconds. And that might not seem like too great, but when you're pounding down on elites, it kind of spreads and you'll see these blood streams come from the enemies that heal you. So it basically keeps you from having to use Hammer of the Ancients on each and every enemy. You might have seen that from the footage. I'm basically concentrating on the elites and moving on. This is really powerful and just pretty incredible for this build. The other source of AoE damage, which is also kind of multifunctional, is Blood Boil. So when my core skills overpower, it spawns these little red globes, and if you touch those globes, it does AoE damage to all the enemies around it. The damage isn't super significant, but it does add a little bit of AoE. But really the powerful reason we're taking it is for the secondary ability. Every 20 seconds your next skill is guaranteed to overpower. That's yet another one of the overpower engines that's driving this build. Super powerful. Metamorphosis. This is frankly broken too. This allows you to turn into a bat, becoming unstoppable for 4 seconds, and as you jump through enemies with evade, so if you hit the spacebar, go through enemies, it inflicts them with a vampiric curse. And the vampiric curse allows you to you stack up damage, and then you can use a defense ability to unleash those ghost things because of the season. Super powerful, and the cool thing about this is it synergizes with Tybalt's Will. So every time you're evading, you go unstoppable because of that power. And we know what happens when we go unstoppable. We get 50 of our primary resource and get plus 40% damage. So it's super ridiculous, especially if you have a boots with 2 evade charges, which I don't, but I would try to get. Super powerful. Sanguine Brace, this is just another defensive ability. When you kill an enemy, you fortify for 6% of your base life. That's how I'm getting a lot of fortify. It also gives us 8% critical strike chance when we have more than half of our life as fortify. Now, how would I do this if I was just doing like single target boss runs? I would take out Hemomancy and replace it with Ravenous. Ravenous would just give us more single target DPS. There's a few other options you can go. Things like, let's see, Domination I think could be good in this build at times. You can go with Anticipation to get more Wrath of the Berserker. And you can get Prey on the Weak. All of these are pretty good options if you want to go a more single target direction. Prey on the Weak allows your Vampiric Curses also to be vulnerable, and you're doing more damage to vulnerable targets through several things in this build because of it. But this is the way I like to build it for quick, clear Nightmare dungeons, and I'll stand by that. Alright, let's take a look at a little bit of the gameplay, and then I'm just going to close out and summarize some of the pros and cons about this build. Alright, we're in this Belfry Zakara. I'm basically charging, concentrating my damage on elites. You can see I pound through them quickly. I'm just collecting the items too. We're just rolling through, make sure your shouts are up. Basically, use challenging when you get to elite packs. It's really important, like right there. And like I said, you can basically concentrate on elites. You can see my damage is huge with the overpowers, and it is spreading a little bit via Hemomancy, like right there. So we're doing AoE damage at the same time as our huge pounding. Get that bell, get that elite, just one-shot those and move on. Whenever I'm low on resource, I like to evade. We get the spark here, but I will be evading so I get my resource back via Tybalt's Will and get that damage boost. So we'll just finish up this spark here, get through, and then I'll show you some more. But I'm gonna try to not kill elites with this spark. Alright, cool, we're back. Pound that elite, one-shot it, roll through with Hemomancy, and basically that's about it. It's just super quick, and we're making mincemeat of these enemies. Let's show you how to do the bosses. For the boss, we're basically just going to pop off our abilities, apply the Vampiric Brace, and slam down. So, you just one-shot the boss. This is 71. You can go higher on this too. Alright, so just a few pros and cons real quick. As far as pros, it's just straight up one of the most powerful builds in the entire game. Those huge overpower hits make it so easy to destroy bosses quickly and clear through nightmare dungeons with ease. I think the only build that is as powerful as this one overall is the Sorcerer Ball Lightning build. As far as cons, I honestly don't see many. It can be a little glass cannony unless you stack kind of, some resist all, which I'm not doing that to a huge degree. But it also isn't generally good at AoE unless you build it like me. So trust in the Hemomancy. That's an amazing vampiric power. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't sleep on it. But that's about it. If you like this build guide, I've done a few more on Barbarian. I've already done one on Whirlwind and one on Double Swing. There will be more to come. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel for more retro gaming and Diablo 4 content. Check the planner in the link below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.